When I'm writing the first one, I hit 800 pages and the no end was in sight. And I hit 900 pages and no end was in sight. I hit 1,000 pages and no end was in sight. And by the time I hit like 1,400 pages and still no end was in sight, I said, maybe it's 4 books.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to revisit George's original pitch letter for his A Song of Ice and Fire book series. Many of the ideas in here were smartly scrapped for better versions, but there is one that I think could have saved his entire saga. And if he had followed that path, we would have already read Winds of Winter by now. With the disaster that was the TV series and the meme that the wait for the books has become, Martin's original ideas are even more interesting to analyze now. So let's dive in. Let's get the strangest and creepiest idea out of the way first. George had originally intended a love triangle. The two men involved were to be Tyrion and Jon. So you might be thinking that they both fall in love with Daenerys. But no, it wasn't the Mother of Dragons. On second thought, you're maybe thinking Sansa. After all, Tyrion was originally forced into a marriage with her, and perhaps later on, true feelings could develop. At least there's a basis there. And while Jon believes Sansa is his half sister, with Jaime and Cersei being full blooded siblings and the pattern of Targaryens intermarrying, it has become an element in George's fantasy world. But no, it's not Sansa either. George was originally going to have Jon and Tyrion both fall in love with Arya. Yeah, Arya. Here's the excerpt from his proposal. Arya will be more forgiving until she realizes with terror that she has fallen in love with Jon. Yeah, she's not the only one experiencing terror with that, George. Anyway, he goes on to say, Jon, who is not only her half brother, but a man of the Night's Watch, sworn to celibacy. Their passions will continue to torment Jon and Arya throughout the trilogy until the secret of Jon's true parentage is finally revealed in the last book. Later in the letter, Martin goes on to mention that Tyrion will fall for Arya too, but his feelings won't be reciprocated. In the books, Arya's age at the start of the story is only 9. And while George did mention he planned on having the characters move into adulthood, and in the original version we'd likely get some time skips, she's still just 9 here. But let's just forget about that one and move on. Martin also had Robb dying on the battlefield to Jaime and Tyrion's armies and allies. Not only was the Red Wedding a better choice due to its shocking nature and impact, but also had Tywin Lannister playing a central role. In this pitch, it was Jaime and Tyrion as the catalyst. He even had Tyrion going on to besiege and burn Winterfell. Theon was a much better decision, both in terms of his betrayal and just the arc of the Lannister characters. Prior to his death, Robb was going to maim but not kill Joffrey while in battle. The path taken, where Joffrey was a coward afraid of conflict, I think was much, much better. Jaime and Tyrion go on to remove Joffrey from power, and Jaime becomes ruthless, killing off claimants to the throne and taking it for himself. This leads Tyrion to turning on his brother and allying with the Starks. Again, I think George was wise not taking this route. The more complex and conflicted Jaime character was far more interesting. Now let's get to the one I believe would have saved George a lot of problems and fast-tracked the book series to completion. And that was the plan to have Daenerys arrive in Westeros much sooner. In this scenario, she murdered Drogo to revenge the death of Viserys and then took over the Dothraki. And while I prefer the path that Martin eventually decided on to take with Drogo, Daenerys arriving in the Seven Kingdoms would have eliminated all those meanderings in Essos. While I think the addition of the Unsullied was good and should have been included, all of the stuff in Meereen, while entertaining to read at the time, is like its own separate saga. And this is a big part of what's gotten George bogged down, and the story more difficult to tie together. Now he's backed into the corner of first having to free Dany of her commitments and all the complications that are in Essos. And while Martin's original intent was a trilogy ending with Winds of Winter, I think we can all recognize that the story was just too big for that, even if Daenerys took a shortcut to Westeros. Still, if you think that it would have taken 2, maybe 3 more books to wrap up the story from George's original trilogy plan, and right now we're at 5 books, if you take this into account, we'd be at or near the finish line right now. In his proposal, George said, As you know, I don't outline my novels. I find that if I know exactly where a book is going, I lose all interest in writing. I do, however, have some strong notions as to the overall structure of the story I'm telling and the eventual fate of many of the principal characters in the drama. The trouble here is that he let Dany wander a bit too much. She's a central character, and her absence from all the drama in Westeros is the greatest hurdle here for the conclusion of the story in a coherent and timely manner. Another plot that George had planned was for Catelyn to escape the burning of Winterfell with Bran and Arya. While I believe Catelyn's fate at the Red Wedding was the best fit, I wouldn't have been opposed to Arya accompanying Bran to combine those two stories and perhaps their training as well. Strangely enough, Martin's original idea was for Benjen and Jon to be unable to help the Starks at the Night's Watch, so then the family goes beyond the wall. This embitters Bran to Jon, but not Arya, because, well, we know what George had in mind there. He then had Catelyn eventually dying at the hands of White Walkers. In both versions, though, he had the real danger coming down from the north and the land of always winter. You can even feel the inspiration and interest George had in this existential threat. The greatest danger of all, however, comes from the north, from the icy wastes beyond the wall, where half-forgotten demons out of legend, the inhuman others, raise cold legions of the undead and the newborn and prepare to ride down on the winds of winter to extinguish everything we call life. That's a great pitch right there. He concludes with, the final battle will also draw together characters and plot threads left from the first two books and resolve all in one huge climax. And that's where the problem of having Daenerys and Essos so long looms large. Sure, this isn't to say that George might not have gotten sidetracked elsewhere, and we have to admit that some of the other plots have become a bit extended, but still, it's impossible to bring it all together when Daenerys is not even on the playing field yet for the main act. All what could have been. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to hit the like button. And if you're interested in more on A Song of Ice and Fire and House of the Dragon, listen to Caraxes and subscribe. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you soon.